What's going on, guys? So it is kind of a nasty, rainy, wet day out. I'm here at Lithia Ram in Corpus Christi, Texas. And the point of today's video is to talk about a topic a lot of people like to talk about. They often say anytime you get into a fifth wheel, you have to go out and spend $80,000 on a truck. So what I want to do now is show you really two different options. This right here is a work truck option. It's a Tradesman edition. It's a 2019, so this is the new body style. And even though it has the black work truck bumper, it is still pretty well equipped. It has power windows, door locks, power mirrors. It's got the flip-up tow mirrors. It's got a little 5-inch touchscreen in it. And it's definitely a configuration that you could use if you're going to be hauling a fifth wheel. And this is only a $55,000 truck. This Bighorn right here is a $62,000 truck. But of course, you can expect some pretty deep discounts and rebates on these trucks. And this one's probably going to be in the mid to low 50s whenever you buy it. And this specific truck is a Bighorn, which means it's going to have a lot more technology and a lot more features. And you're looking for a truck that has the towing capacity and payload capacity to properly handle a fifth wheel. So we're going to take this one out and I'm going to show you what you get for $62,000 in a truck. It's got a nice keyless fob here, and it's got remote start as well, which is really nice. Something you might not expect on a truck like this. Let's take a hop inside. I mean, you gotta admit, it's pretty nice inside. Pretty well equipped. You still get your infotainment system up here to provide you information about your miles per gallon and other information related to the engine and operation. You're going to have your 8.4-inch Uconnect display in here, which is actually larger than both GM and Ford offerings. Both of them are 8-inch screens. You have several choices down here: front parking sensor and rear parking sensor, tow haul mode, diesel engine exhaust brake, and your brake controller here. This is a 4-wheel drive system. If you go with the Tradesman edition, which is this truck right next to us, you're going to have a manual shifter on the floor, whereas on this truck, it's a push-button 4-wheel drive system. So, you know, you're paying a little bit more, but it's a significantly upgraded interior. On that truck, you're going to have no center console. It's going to be a bench seat with a fold-down armrest that has a couple cup holders in it, and it has the 5-inch display versus the 8.4-inch display. So much larger display, much nicer appointed interior, and overall, it's just going to be a better luxury trim package. This truck has roughly a $7,000 premium over that truck. In my opinion, it's worth it just because you don't want to get a truck, especially if it's this expensive, and then say, man, I wish I would have just spent a little bit more and actually got a truck that I really like versus a truck that I just barely like. And this is going to give you that, especially in the Bighorn trim. Now, something I really like is how vibrant and how high resolution that backup camera is. That puts my Ford to shame. It is simply amazing how clear your backup camera picture is on this truck. And it's been raining, which oftentimes in my case, my camera has beaded up water droplets on it. You really can't see anything. You know, it's raining pretty well out here and the camera's crystal clear. And that's partially because the way they design kind of the back lip creates a little bit of a shade or shelter from the rain. But I really like the camera. Something else that I've also noticed, and this is the same thing that they talked about in Las Vegas when they were giving us the opportunity to drive it, is that you no longer have that kind of clattering noise that you used to get and was pretty synonymous with the 6.7 liter and even older generation Cummins. It's completely eliminated now. So they've redesigned the engine from the ground up. Even though it's the same displacement, it is definitely a different design in overall execution. It's a much quieter engine. The interior of this truck is incredibly quiet. It's definitely more on par with that of a Duramax or even a Power Stroke. But no more of that clicking noise, no more of that clattering noise that you were used to with Cummins diesel engines. Okay, now I have my mirrors in ghost towing mode, which I absolutely love on the Ram, simply because it kind of reminds me of the mirrors that I have in my truck, and it is a much better viewing experience for your spot mirror specifically when you're towing like this. So I flip the mirrors up because for me, it's a little bit easier to view what I like to view in the way that I normally view it. Ghost trailering mode it is. Okay, so when I was in Las Vegas and we were doing the Ram Drive event where they flew a bunch of journalists out and we spent time driving around new Ram trucks in the mountains and different areas towing different things, almost every truck that was out there was a relatively high trim package. I think the truck I was driving originally was a Limited, and then we followed it up by a Laramie Longhorn, but every truck out there had a pretty high trim spec package to it. This vehicle right here is what I think most people are probably going to end up buying, simply because you're going to save some money. It's not going to be an $85,000 truck. It's not going to be $90,000. It's not even going to be 70 grand. To get a truck with this much technology, this much equipment for this price isn't actually bad at all. Now, this truck is equipped with the 68 RFE transmission, so it's not the Aisin transmission. So because this truck is not equipped with the Aisin transmission, it's going to have slightly less horsepower and torque than if you got it with the high output Cummins engine. But it's still by no means an underpowered truck in any way. This 6.7 liter Cummins is pretty amazing. So one of the reasons why I wanted to drive this truck was to give you my overall driving impressions in terms of what would it be like to own this truck on a day in, day out basis. Can you drive this truck normally? Does it feel comfortable? Does it handle bumps? Does it handle rough roads? Does it handle the conditions that you might drive it through on a day-to-day basis, even when you're not towing, in a manner that you'd feel comfortable driving this every day? So that's what I wanted to talk about, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to drive this specific truck. Now, I'm not going to take this thing off-roading. This is not a power wagon, and it's not designed to be a power wagon. It's not really designed to compete against any other four-wheel drive truck, other than the fact that it has four-wheel drive. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're on loose sand, gravel, or in a muddy situation, four-wheel drive is definitely going to give you a huge advantage over two-wheel drive. It's also going to help if you're in inclement weather, such as rain or maybe snow or ice, and you need that extra traction that four-wheel drive allots you. It's going to have a little bit higher stance. It's going to sit about 3 inches taller than a two-wheel drive truck, but more importantly, it's going to have that on-demand capability if you need it. Now, just like any dually truck, unloaded, it's going to have a relatively firm ride, simply because the rear leaf springs of this truck are really designed to haul payload. It's designed to haul weight. If you wanted a truck that had a little bit smoother ride, then you would probably opt for a single rear wheel version of a truck like this. But in the case of a truck that's a dually, dualies are designed because they're expected that you're going to put more payload over the back axles. That's why they handle trailers as well as fifth wheels a little bit better and with more ease than you might see with a single rear wheel truck. So we are off. It is now raining a lot harder than it was raining a minute ago. We're not going to go around too much just because it's not my truck, and I respect the fact that I'm being allowed to drive this truck around, and I definitely don't want to put it at any type of risk of being involved in some type of an accident simply because I choose to drive around in horrible weather for an extended period of time. But what I want to do is simply give you my feedback on how I feel this truck drives and behaves when compared to my truck or compared to another dually. In my opinion, for being a dually, it actually drives very well. It drives very smooth. That Cummins power plant is so much quieter than it's ever been. It truly is a muted engine compared to what it was in the past. And again, not hearing the ticking or any of the clunking that you were typically familiar with Cummins is kind of nice. It feels like they've evolved the engine. The engine definitely has been refined from its previous generation. One thing I do love about the interior of this truck is how everything's just muted. In terms of when you go over bumps, you don't hear any clattering, you don't hear any kind of creaks or cracking, and that's something that's really been a huge improvement across all truck brands. It's very unlikely that you're going to hop into any truck, any new truck, and hear panels creaking or hear, noises when you go over bumps that you shouldn't hear. They've done a great job of really isolating the cab and making it a quiet place and a comfortable place to be. Because I think when you hear that stuff in a truck, it makes the truck feel old, even when it might not be. Overall, though, I'm really pleased with the interior of the truck. I'm pleased with this entire environment that I'm sitting in, simply because you're traditionally going to see kind of a stripped down interior when you go to a lower trim package. The competitor to this would be a Ford XLT or a Chevy SLT. And with these specific trucks, oftentimes you feel as if you've given up stuff. Now, what this truck doesn't have is navigation. It doesn't have heated or cooled seats. It's not going to have some features that you might expect in a higher trim package. It only has a reverse camera. It doesn't have the high center mount camera or the 360-degree camera. It doesn't have air suspension, even though some of those features are optional on this truck. So you can still get a Bighorn edition of this truck in a pretty nice luxury equipped package if you don't want things like leather interior, which this truck doesn't have. Overall though, I really like how the truck drives. I honestly feel that this would be an easy truck to migrate to from any other truck, whether you're a previous Ram owner, whether you're a Ford or a Chevy or GMC owner and you're looking to get into a different type of truck, or you just want to see what options are available. When you're looking for your next truck, don't pigeonhole yourself into one brand just because that's the brand you're used to. Take them all for a drive. The reason why you're seeing me spend a little bit more time in these new Rams is because they're already out on the market. To get the new Chevy, the new GMC or Ford truck, you're going to have to wait another 6 to 8 months before we even do the drive of them. And then after that, you're probably going to have to wait another 2 or 3 months before they're actually available for sale. In terms of driving impressions, I can't talk about the other trucks because I haven't had a chance to drive any of them yet. But I am very pleased with Ram so far. Right now, they have an excellent offering. Now, keep in mind, when you go to their heavy-duty trucks like this one, you are going to have essentially the same space on the inside as you would have had in the previous generation. The cab, even though it's been updated from a technology and an interior perspective to really replicate that of the half-ton truck, the overall interior space and volume hasn't changed from the outgoing model. So whether you get the crew cab version or you get the mega cab version, it's really going to be the same length and width as the outgoing version. The seats are going to be a little bit different. They definitely are a little bit more comfortable. I think they're also a little firmer as well, but in a good way. They feel as if they support you really well. Now, the reason why I'm going over the specific roads that I'm going over is because they're not the smoothest roads. These are probably some of the poorest maintained roads in this town, and I want to get a good feeling, again, of what this truck is going to be like if you're driving it on an everyday basis. Some people drive their trucks predominantly over the interstates, which are usually pretty smooth for the most part, depending what state you drive through. But when you're driving over these local roads, which sometimes don't have the budget to be maintained the way they should be, you get more of an idea of how the truck is going to handle, everyday lifestyle, the bumps and the jolts and the different things that you might be going over. And in my opinion, it feels more refined than the outgoing model. It feels smoother than the outgoing model, but because it's a dually, it still feels like a heavy-duty dually. Dually trucks are generally going to have a harsher ride than any of their single rear-wheel counterparts, simply because you're going to have a more heavier-duty rear suspension that's designed for payload, which means when you don't have weight over the back of the truck, it's going to feel stiffer simply because the springs are designed to have heavier weights over them. I'm on my way back to the dealership where we will take a closer look at the outside of this Bighorn so you can get a better idea of what this entire package looks like. And then we'll talk about some of the numbers.